Is keto going to be included in the 2020 Dietary Guidelines? Or more specifically, the question is, will the 2020 Dietary Guidelines be updated to acknowledge or even recommend low carb or ketogenic diets for a variety of reasons or approaches? The answer might surprise you. All right, stay with me because we're going to have to cover a lot of ground to establish why it's likely low carb and keto will be included in the 2020 Dietary Guidelines. Everybody always wants to holler, industry influence, and we're going to get to that. But there's a lot more going on here that you'll need to see. After you watch this video, you're not going to be able to say, the Dietary Guidelines recommended keto because they are biased or riding some sort of keto fad. That's not what's going on here. So first of all, the advisory committee is considering several topics related to high-fat diets. There are several overarching topics under consideration regarding types of dietary fat, all-cause mortality, heart disease, and cancer risk. When you start getting into some of the more focused subtopics and questions under consideration, you'll see that they are performing systematic reviews on the relationship between dietary patterns and type 2 diabetes. Hit that subscribe button so you can see why this is one of the most important public health developments no one else is talking about. They will be examining studies on vegetarian and vegan diets as well as low carbohydrates and high-fat diets. It's important to note the inclusion criteria focuses on blood sugar levels, insulin, and A1C. These are all things that can be lowered and maintained on a keto diet, of course without a carbohydrate challenge, that is. Also note the publication date range appears to be focused on recent research, although my reading of this inclusion criteria leads me to believe they will also consider all previously considered evidence from the last Dietary Guidelines systematic review. So why do you think they are going to include keto in the next Dietary Guidelines? There's been a ton of new research on low-carb diets. Take a look at this.
We've done a systematic pull of all of the data, of all of the research. And here's how the research stacks up. Randomized controlled trial and meta-analysis in the light blue, other trials in the dark blue. And it's no wonder the standard of care changes. The evidence is there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As you can see, there's a ton of research on low carb and diabetes that's likely to meet the inclusion criteria for the 2020 Dietary Guidelines consideration. Now, I've already covered this systematic review by Dr. Hallberg in a different video, which you need to see after this, because this is how narratives are crafted in the medical community in order to shift public opinion. But stay with me right now so I can show you how Donald Trump hasn't drained the swamp or the revolving door, and the feeding frenzy is only just beginning. The selection of members for the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee has always been controversial, with the low-carb people claiming that there's a vegan religious cult running the show. But we can also see a different influence. Politico is reporting Atkins Nutritionals gave a stamp of approval for the lineup of nutrition experts chosen for the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. Colette Heimowitz, Vice President of Nutrition in Education for Atkins, was proud to say she thinks a lot of these people are more aware of the high-quality, low-carb research that has been done in the past few years. Gotta get those robust health outcomes, right, Colette? I think it's a safe bet to assume the people on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee do, in fact, know about the high-quality, low-carb research that has been done in the past few years, considering Atkins Nutritionals handpicked someone who has published research showing the benefits of a low-carb diet. Also noteworthy is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association placing 2 experts on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, and the American Beverage Association, which is of course where the vegans are sneaking in the religious ideology to drink Coca-Cola and exercise. When considering whether or not the 2020 dietary guidelines are going to endorse keto or low carb, it's not just the composition of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee and the allegiances of the members who were selected to sit on it that make up all the difference. I think we have to recognize that in the past year or so, several professional organizations devoted to chronic disease, namely diabetes, have come out and acknowledged or endorsed a low carb or a ketogenic diet. Let's take a look at Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who was exhilarated to announce this earlier this year.
New guidelines out last October endorsed low carb by the ADA and the EASD as a recommended eating pattern, and the new ADA standard of care. And I'm super pleased to report that they cited our trial when they made the change, putting low carb as a recommended eating pattern. I don't know if anyone knows this, but the Department of Defense, the VA, have been recommending low carb for over a year now. And we look here and say the carbohydrate intake as low as 14% recommended by the VA and the DoD. That's important. And low carb is now the standard of care. We are not some fringe diet. That's big, right? This is big. We are not fringy. The evidence doesn't allow that anymore. We are standard of care.
This is a major victory for low carb proponents in terms of diabetes care and the use of a low carb diet. And I think we have to acknowledge that the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee is going to be examining the question of high-fat diets. This is where it gets a little tricky for me if I'm gonna project that they will in fact recommend the keto diet on the 2020 dietary guidelines, because the question of dietary patterns and type 2 diabetes is not the only thing relevant to whether or not the keto diet becomes a part of the 2020 dietary guidelines. Another big question on the plate, so to speak, is the relationship between dietary patterns and risk of heart disease. This same question will be examined. Research on a vegetarian and vegan diet, as well as low carb and high fat diets, will be considered. You may notice that robust is not a subjective adjective the committee will be examining when it comes to health outcomes and hard endpoints of cardiovascular disease. It's difficult to imagine how they will reconcile recommending keto in the 2020 dietary guidelines, but I think it's almost a sure thing given the use of strategically published research over the past few years, not to mention inclusion criteria and industry influence, which we've discussed in this video. I'm also curious if they will be able to distinguish between healthy keto and dirty keto, because there's so much conflicting information from the same voices that lead the general public in this direction towards a high-fat diet. Now, I want to hear from y'all. Do you think the keto diet will be endorsed in the 2020 dietary guidelines? How will this be reconciled if they also make recommendations to eat a plant-based diet? I don't think they're going to be saying vegan keto for the masses, the general public. It's not going to happen. Researchers and promoters of the keto diet have structured the research on diabetes so carefully, more than likely we will see this specific use for low-carb diets obtaining more general recognition at a policy level. If you want to understand more about this recent research, be sure to click on the thumbnail that pops up in a moment for the next video. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now y'all know what time it is. Red pill vegan, nah.